How about we'll do some intros and then jump into it. Alexa, let's do our intro, and then Daisy and Tom can do their intro. Um, I'm Connor Cook, and my composing partner is Alexa Borden. We are celebrating 10 years of working together this year. Woo woo! Going to Curacao to celebrate. We won that on a game show. Just that's random. And we've done, I don't even know how many projects together. Alexa, how many projects do you think we've done?
Probably close to 50 projects. We met at Columbia College, Chicago in grad school. We were really fast friends and almost as fast co-composers, and we've been doing it ever since.
Yeah, that's us. Daisy and Tom, how about y'all?
Amazing.
Yeah.
How long have we been writing? 9 years, I think.
Yeah, so you beat us by one. Well, we'll catch up. I think you're also beating us on the projects as well. I think we're only in the 40s, but
Oh Lord, I have no idea.
yeah.
Absolutely no, a lot. Yeah, we work on everything together, and always have done since we started. We met because we were writing jazz fusion together, and then pivoted from that fairly rapidly.
Yeah, can we just slow down? We were writing jazz fusion together and we thought, well, that's a little bit too inaccessible. More film composing instead, shall we?
Yeah, that seems easy.
Hell of a pivot. Yeah, we're really good at business.
Clearly.
Do you guys actually like write on everything that you guys do together, or do you also have your separate solo outfits as well?
We have some separate projects, but I think the majority of our projects have been together.
Yeah, definitely majority. Few things here and there, random little passion projects and things we've done solo, but I'd say vast majority we've done co-composing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you find, I feel like I'm diving in the deep end because it's so rare that we actually meet another duo. I can think of a couple over here in London, a couple of couples, a couple of duos. So I'm always so nosy about everyone else's process. And also because I, preach the collaboration all the time. So it's very exciting. Do you, what was your route into writing together? How did you make that decision to collaborate?
That's a good
I
question.
think it was, we kind of, I don't want to say it was an easy way in, but we started doing class assignments together in school. And that just felt so natural. And we just like found a flow really quickly in doing assignments together. And it just translated so easily into actually scoring projects. So that when we first started going out for projects, we were like, do you want to do this together? And it just worked so well that we just kind of rode that. And it's been fantastic. But that was our in. So how did you transfer, like when you first got into writing jazz fusion together, what was that like?
Oh, good question. So we kind of met and started doing that straight away. So we came from very different paths, but a really big crossover of music that we loved. The sort of a Venn diagram of music that we loved. But we had really, really different writing styles. Like that, our process was completely different. And I know mine certainly really shifted over the last 10 years. But I remember when we first started writing together, I was very much a in my head kind of writer. So I'd have to figure out all the bits first before I kind of go, okay, now we're going to put it down, or saxophone now, or flute, now we're going to put it down. And I think you're much more of an instinctive writer, and you're a feel your way around it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for most musicians who come from playing in bands and working in a room with lots of different people and trying to get the best sound based upon what everyone else is playing with, there's already that ideology that what you have written musically might not necessarily be the best thing until somebody else comes along and gives you some ideas, and then you can bounce off of each other. So when Daisy and I were writing music together, there was chord progressions where one person might take a chord from that progression, just say, do you know what, we can do better than this. And I think that just kind of signaled to one another that we can trust each other. And I think it wasn't until Daisy you said to me, like, I would not normally let anyone touch my harmony. And it's vice versa. It's like, yeah, well, you do, but like we figured each other out, and kind of that was the starting point. But since then, I think the partnership has evolved quite wildly.
Usually. Yeah. Have you guys found that? Have you found over the years you've been working together, it's kind of shifted either your personal processes or the way that you actually collaborate?
Well, we've definitely become much more efficient. I would say we've figured out a very streamlined process, because Alexa and I are kind of similar to y'all in that I would say Alexa's more structured and thoughtful on things, and I'm more come in and just like bleh, like throw things, and I like literally just jump in with no thought whatsoever.
From you.
Yeah, it seems like in duos there's one who's more like that and one who's more like, let me use my brain. But it works for us because it's like two sides of the same coin. And I think our greatest hurdle we've overcome is we figured out a process organizationally, because Alexa's the most organized person to live. She's incredible. And we figured out this way that we can really streamline our work process, save a lot of time, so that we can maybe have a little cocktail after work or something, you know, a little fun. In addition to the work. Is good. What would you say, Alexa?
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I think the on my personal end, like working with Connor has been so inspiring for me, because like she said, she just like jumps in and does things. And I originally in my process, or when I ever do like my few solo projects, I will get so stuck in my head that it's hard to like get things out. And Connor is super inspiring, because working with her has taught me to like take more risks and like allow the creative process to just be creative and not get so stuck in that headspace of like, is this work? Is this going to work? Don't worry about it. Just do it, because if you're passionate about it and if you try something, maybe it doesn't work, but you know what? It's out there now, and you can get inspiration and pull things from that. And like just working with Connor has just brought so much more inspiration and like drive into that creative part of my process. It's been,
I mean,
yeah.
Connor, when you hear that, like, do you think that there's a lot of risks that you feel like you can take and you can push based upon the fact that you have that partnership with Alexa, so that it allows you to think, okay, do you know what? We're going to refine this, but let's see how far we can push it. Do you have that?
Absolutely. I would say I recently watched the Steve Martin masterclass on editing, and I always think of Alexa when I think of this. Like, she has this skill of taking something and reworking it and making it better. Like, my half-formed thought, she will take and turn it into a full-formed thought, which I think is a greater skill. I really do think that, because editing is much harder than generating an idea. Taking an idea and making it better, I mean, that's a real skill. So I find that we have a really good balance of, well, just kind of like picking up like slack where the other one maybe has more insecurity around things. Like, we've really fallen into a pattern of figuring out how to, I guess, finding each other's strengths and weaknesses and not being like embarrassed or shy about it, and just embracing that, because not only are we co-composers, we're also really close friends. So I think that, I mean, best friends. So I think that helps with like our communication being really open, and like, if I mess up, I'm not embarrassed to be like, I goofed. I won't like hide it or something. I'll be like, this is how I goofed and I did it 2 minutes ago. Can you help me fix it? And that's how it goes. How about y'all?
I think that's so familiar. I think for me, the major benefit of working with somebody else is that the point at which I've just tied myself up in knots here. I've got completely stuck. Can you please just come and unpick what I've done? Because you get the fresh eyes, and not just that, but the fresh eyes from someone who thinks differently is so important, because someone that's like you is not going to be able to unpick what you've done, but someone that's coming from a different direction is going to see it differently and is going to be able to go, okay, that's rubbish, but that little nugget in there, that we can unpick and we can keep that. And at that point, I'm usually like, I can't believe I didn't see that. Or, oh, thank God, because trying to get through that wall, I know would have been impossible. And I think it's very much like, I think I once described it as, it's like having a key for a lock, and you just don't have that key and the other person does. And you would never have been able to open that door, but they come along and go, oh no, here you go. There you go. There's your B section, or there's the middle part of your queue, or whatever it is. And I never understand how people who do it on their own manage to break through that.
Yeah, I was just about to say, it's one of the first things that springs to mind when we're discussing how we work as a co-composer duo when we're with other composers, and they say, I don't know how you can work with somebody else. So it's like, well, I mean, you have to collaborate with someone somewhere. So this is the first step in that chain. But also, I don't know how you can do what you do, not always wondering whether or not the direction you've taken is the right direction. I mean, we're talking in abstract. There is no real right direction, but that's one of the things that always confuses me when I'm talking to another composer. Like, tell us about your process, and then yet solo composers outnumber us by quite a way.
Yeah, I would say vast numbers. That made me think of another question, which is, can we talk process? Like, we're so curious because Alexa and I really, like, we put our fingers on everything. Like, we don't split up cues, we co-write everything, and we just do a lot of sending back and forth, and we write our themes together. You know, I'll do the A, you do the B. When y'all mentioned that resonated. So if you don't mind sharing, what is y'all's process like?
Yeah, this is music to my ears. This is exactly how we kind of envisioned I want to be less wanky about it, but I'm going to say like the true composer duo. Like, I'm not taking anything away from composers who are able to work remotely and do different cues and then call what they do collaborations. But for us, for that energy to really kind of work to our advantage, we have to feel like we're able to kind of like work on each other. And at the end of the process, I think at the end of the project, if we can get to that finishing line and then look back and wonder who did what, like do you know which cue you did? I don't know which cue I did, because we all did the cues together, you know. Yeah. It's that kind of thing. The
number of times that I've gone, oh, I remember you did that was really cool, and Tom's like, no, you did that. Or vice versa. So process, we don't have a person that starts particularly. Often the person that sits down is the person that has the strongest either connections to the project, either it's just resonated with them narratively, or the style has resonated with them, or it's specifically around their instrument. So I play woodwind and passable piano, and Tom plays all of the rhythm section and passable piano. So we kind of cross over slightly. But for example, in the last 5 months, we've done like a saxophone based score. So with that one, I created a bunch of instruments from my playing initially, and saved them as presets, and then we'd use those and then create more around using those samples. So I would start that just because I was particularly drawn to it. But then a different one, we did a full drum kit score, and so Tom took the lead on that. So it really depends on who is most drawn to it. But often that person, and this kind of goes to, you know, a bigger question about relationships and you know, that the heart of what people most often ask, you know, about trust, but it's often that person becomes what we termed a long time ago like a project manager, which is a very corporate way of saying they kind of have, at the point at which we disagree, they have the ultimate veto, which we try not to use. It's a powerful stat.
It's a red
fighting
button.
words.
It's kept under a lock and everything. And yeah.
But you know, ideally, they are the person that most communicates with the filmmaker or the producer or the director. Like they become like the information flow, so it doesn't get too scattered. So that's kind of our starting point, and then after that, it's usually really similar. Like we build up all of our cues from there. We both mix everything. We both record. We both orchestrate. There's not really difference. When we started, I think I was more of an orchestrator, and what you guys were saying about having one person who's much better at kind of going, ta-da, here's an idea, that was very much Tom, and I would kind of nitpick at it. But I think over the years, as as we both grow in knowledge from each other, like we absorb each other's knowledge, which is incredibly useful, and from the community, it's much more balanced, which works out really well, I think, because obviously if you're starting a project and one of you's busy or doing something else, you can't afford to wait. So having a balanced skill set, or at least knowing what your personal strengths are within that process, I think is really important, because then you know what you're gonna bring to it. Like I love making instruments, that's my thing. I just love it. So that's always my go-to to start a thing, is just trying finding sounds and stuff. Whereas if it was a drum kit score, I don't know, I'd be, I guess, going through grooves and stuff, but I would definitely want you to start that, just because that's your massive strength, speciality.
In terms of how the process actually looks in terms of the partnership, tell me if this is something that you guys we are being hassled, by the way. We have got a little cat who's really trying to get in on the meeting.
She woke up.
What was I saying? Yeah, so we tag team the desk behind us, and one person sits at the desk whilst the other person's kind of like doing other stuff, but two ears on what's happening coming out of monitors. And then, like Daisy said earlier, when it gets to the point where one of us feels like we're running dry, we'll say switch, and then that'll just keep everything moving forward. But it also allows us to be able to kind of like make sure that we remain in the world that we're trying to create musically, so that so that it doesn't just feel like it's a surprise when it's instantly presented to us. Another possible reality is where one of us is working on it whilst the other one might have to go out, and then just allowing that fresh set of ears to come back into the room. I don't know if all of you composers get this, but after a few hours, you suddenly get like that, ear blindness. You're just not listening to anything of any value anymore. You could just be banging your fists against the keyboard and like thinking it's all sounding good, and you don't always have the liberty of having the morning after. So when someone else walks into the room, it immediately brings everything back to reality. And oh my God, I've just spent the last 2 hours writing complete enough. It's a crap. Thank you very much for coming in. So those are the kind of things that we kind of to our advantage. Like, is that kind of similar to what you guys do? Are you ever in the same room together when you're working on stuff?
Yeah, we do kind of both. So we are often in the same room, and then I think our main process these days is the first thing we always do for a project is find the palette, like the sound palette, and we'll write themes. And once we nail down those two things, we'll each like kind of pick a cue to start, and then we'll send them back and like we'll switch. So it's like whatever Connor starts on, I get to take a crack at, and then whatever I start on, she gets to take a crack at. We figure out where different melodies and themes are going to go in all of our cues right up front. But the amount of times my notes to Connor when I send over a cue that I started is, I don't know if this is working. This might be bad. Feel free to delete it. Like it's total, like anything you want to take out or change, go for it. Like I think those are like probably what, Connor, like 80% of our notes to each other.
Oh, surely, maybe 90. It's a lot of that. a lot of unrelated things in the composer notes to each other. A lot of silliness, probably encouraged by me, but grateful. I think Alexa accepts it. She hasn't turned me out yet. So we have to keep it silly sometimes. Like we recently worked on a film where like the number of edits was, I will say, very challenging for me, and I literally only got through it because Alexa's so stalwart and I could lean on her for that. I was getting so mad. I was like, they're not respecting our time. I was being, my usual outspoken and thought like speak first, think later self. So we got through it, but it was tough.
We are vibing. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I think you might be the same person.
Isn't it funny how duos like just naturally kind of attract two different personalities, like sun and moon type of. I think it's so awesome because like I have learned so much from Alexa more than going to school. We both formally went to school together. We went to Columbia College Chicago, but I would say I've learned more in the last 8 years past school working together because of how her brain works. Because it's so different from how my brain works, even though we have common things, of course, but just like the mechanics of how we both work and think and feel and are, there's a lot to learn betwixt us. And I think that's honestly my favorite part of co-composing is when Alexa brings something that surprises me, which is pretty much every time, because I'll get something back that I had started and I'm like, God, this is way better now. Thank you. And it's just cool to go to things together and be like, we made this together. Like we did this. It's not just like I did this, because who really cares? Life's so short anyway. You might as well celebrate your victories with the people who are cool and great and fun, I don't want to be an island myself.
I think that's a really, really good point, because the joy that I feel on a project that we've worked on that we can feel fairly proud of is only ever amplified by when I'm able to turn to my partner, and Daisy has got that same kind of feeling, and it's like, oh great, yeah. It's like when you're watching a film with someone, you show them a film and they are just as much in love with that film as you. It's like, great, okay. I just I long for those types of feelings where you can share that pride with someone. Just on a note on when we start a process, and the joy is always when you start having that conversation about sound palettes and about what kind of toys you can pull out of the toy box. At no point would I ever just choose a solo drum kit score.
It wasn't our decision.
Yeah, that's not a choice that I would willingly make. In pain of death.
Yeah, I don't want to drop Tom on it. It wasn't, it definitely wasn't his, like, I want to do a drum score.
That's exactly what I sound like. Be more impressive with me, please.
But so do you guys, when you're like, do you have identical rigs? You must have identical libraries if you're writing everything. Is that kind of part of your constant, if one of you updates is the other, like how do you organize that?
I think 70% of our instruments are the same, but then we have some different ones, which I actually think is very helpful, because some sounds that I have Connor doesn't have, and vice versa. And so it's always cool, again, when we send things back and forth and I get an instrument in there that I don't even know existed previously, and I'm like, oh, this sounds amazing, and then it's like, oh, I want this instrument. So it's like constantly learning new things and finding new things because of the other person. But yes, I think 70% of our, like I said, 70% is probably the same. I think we have a lot of the same instruments. We always bounce everything to audio before we send it. Like we never rely on it being like the MIDI performing as it's supposed to.
No, because my Logic is very fickle. We use Logic, and I'm constantly having problems with Logic. We love to fight, and so we found out pretty quickly audio stems are really the only way to make sure our ideas actually make it to the other person. And I kind of actually now really like doing it that way, because it feels more like a period rather than a question mark. And it's like, we did it. This is what we're sending. And there's something kind of nice about that. But we have a lot of libraries in common, but also a lot different. And we both have Moogs. I have the matriarch, Alexa has the grandmother. So we both do a lot of synthesis and we both play a bunch of live instruments. So we pretty much always use at least a couple of either like totally, we make patches for films on our synths that we use only for the film. We don't reuse them. So right now we're working on a film and we've got this patch that is pretty cool, I think. I think it's cool and we're only going to use it in this film. And we like to do that because it makes the director feel special. And who doesn't want to feel special? Like, we made this for you. I love our work because I think we have a real "we made this for you" energy. We don't reuse stuff. Of course we reuse instruments like strings, but we try to give each project a real fingerprint, like a real identity, a special little, we just like to make it special, I guess. But doesn't everyone? You all do that. Every composer, you're all doing that, and it's amazing. But it's nice to know when it's part of your practice and that it's meaningful for you. Because for us, it's like exciting to make something that only exists in this one instance.
Are there, I mean, you're both multi-instrumentalists, right? Showing off the vast array of instruments behind you. Are there like particularly unusual instruments that you'd like to try and bring into your scores, just to keep not a consistency, but just to always give it that extra dimension?
I think a lot of our recent projects have been, we've been using a lot of the analog synths that we both have. So Connor's got the Matriarch, I have the Grandmother. I also have a Korg mini log, which I really, really love to use on things. So I think the past, I want to say like 4 or 5 projects, we've started like incorporating those in various ways. But I think right now we're like trying to manifest this like really weird. So I come from a background in Baroque music. I played harpsichord in undergrad. And I play theremin now, and Connor plays amazing accordion. Like, I want so badly for us to be able to like land a project where we can use those really, like those 3 instruments. I don't know if it exists, but I'm hoping that the universe grants us this project because I've been wanting it for years.
Yes. So if anyone knows a very weird, bizarre filmmaker and you don't want to touch their weirdness, send it our way. We want to be weird. We do a lot of square things, but our hearts lie in anything weird. Like, really, that's what we love. We want to do some non-linear weird stuff, but so maybe we're trying to manifest that, but neither of us really likes the word manifest, so yeah. It's complicated. That's probably why it hasn't happened yet.
It was the only word that I could find in this moment in time that made sense.
It's true, and we talk about that word a lot, at least once a month. It pops up a lot when we're talking to people, and we just look at each other like, oh yeah, we don't like that word, but we like the idea of it. See, now I'm getting too philosophical. Yo, Daisy and Tom, bring us in.
Is it that you're waiting for the right filmmaker to come along who just accepts the weirdness, or are you looking for the right story that you feel
a space for that?
Yeah, just in terms of cohesion between the those instruments and what you see on screen.
Good question.
I think it has to be both. Yeah.
Yeah, I think both. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be like, would love to do any type of like outlandish score. Like, I just, to feed that like complete unbridled creativity, but the story has to meet that.
Yeah, we can't just do it when we do like Hallmark type stuff. We need it. That would not work. People need to be able to go there with us, which actually I did want to ask today. This was a question I had in my mind, was dream projects. Pretty much that's ours, is to combine our weirdo instruments and make something really unsettling and uncomfortable, but maybe charming. And it's not a specific project, but more of like a vibe. How about y'all? Do you have like a project that you're yearning to make together?
Do we? I don't know.
We have many dream projects. Narrowing it down to one has always been a tricky one. Because I think that I don't know if everyone here kind of feels that when you just worked on a project where you've actually only really scrape the surface of what you can do in terms of that sound palette, you suddenly go, I don't want to stop there. I want to do more of that stuff. And Daisy and I have just been working on some weird stuff, like where she's been bringing out the saxes, and this goes back to what you were saying, Alexa, about just having those instruments. Like, I've been dying for a filmmaker to come along with a film that is right for Daisy to record saxes, because I turn into a bit of a fanboy when I'm seeing Daisy recording against the microphone. And also there's a different approach to writing as well. So I want more of those types of projects, and not because I get to take a backseat, which I do, but basically because I think it allows us to escape the framework of sitting down at a keyboard and typing, and actually being able to, like, just work with sound and how we manipulate the sound, and that's the kind of stuff that I've really been enjoying recently.
Yeah, I think we've been really lucky in that we've had a few projects that have allowed us to do that, where we write in a completely different way because of the approach, and that just means what you almost like trip over some new stuff that you wouldn't have written before. I did a horror a few years ago where we got to work with this amazing folk artist. The director really wanted Finnish and Scandinavian folk instruments, specifically a yahiko, which is like an ancient three-stringed instrument, and a nickel harper.
Her name's Anna Tam. We always try to credit our musicians.
Yeah. So we got to work with this amazing folk artist, Anna, who also did vocals, and it was the first time really that we'd sort of had a session with her, and done the sort of toolkit thing, had a session with her in advance, recorded as many different sounds as possible, both on all of the instruments but also vocally, and then created a library and built it from scratch from the puzzle pieces. So, taking every single sound and changing it in some way. But rather than sitting in a keyboard and going, oh, let's play a G major 7 or whatever, you're kind of going, oh, that sounds nice. And I'm just doing every little tiny piece until you go, oh, there's a picture there that I've just made. Now it's suddenly becoming something, consonant, and it has a form to it. And because and in a way that we wouldn't have done it had we played a chord on a piano or whatever. And similarly, I'm playing this way. I'm trying to do a saxophone on this way on the saxophone compared to this way. I didn't realize until Tom said to me a few years ago that I write completely differently. I think Tom's his first instrument's a guitarist, so he writes differently this way than he does that way. So finding projects where it makes you think differently, usually because the palette's really unusual or the filmmaker's excited about possibilities. I think those projects are kind of our dream projects because they bring something out of us that we didn't know we could do before. And I think that's really important. I think that's what we're all in it for. I'm not, if I wanted a safe job, I'd do something wildly different, but we're in it because we want to explore and play and share and all of these things. So yeah, I think it's a non-specific kind of answer, but things that push you in a direction you never thought you would go.
It often requires a filmmaker to be somewhat weird as well to allow that kind of stuff. Not weird in a dodgy way, but weird in there, like give me some more strangeness. I want to have and confidence. They tend to have to be somewhat confident in just being able to know that the story that they're trying to tell doesn't require some type of conventional standard style of music. It is going to have something that's going to just make it sound a little bit off key, off kilter,
and is unique to that story.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You guys, same back at you. What would be your ideal kind of dream project?
Well, we really want to do an A24 film. Really, really. Like
So do
deeply.
we.
Yeah. Who doesn't? If you don't want to, why are you in this career? That's where the real magic happens. Yeah, I think that'd be like a we made it moment for us. We don't really care about I mean, I'm not saying we wouldn't take it, but we're not like yearning to be huge Hollywood. Like, I mean, unless our we're not aligned anymore, Alexa, which I think we are. But you
Oh,
can tell if
we're
we
aligned.
aren't.
We're aligned.
We're not trying to be like the next James Newton Howard or something like that. Like, we want to make, films that mean something to us, and we love independent film, and we love A24 and Criterion. Those are our spaces where we fall in love with films. And yeah, we talk about film a lot, all the time. We're talking about film, we're talking about actors, performances. We talk about music actually not that much, I would say. We talk much more about like story, musicals. I'm just now getting into musicals because we are currently writing one together. And it's very fun because it's a real mix for the two of us, because Alexa's more of a musical expert and I'm really into like astrology. So you can see how that's a good combo. Right? You can see the natural, right? That it makes sense.
Unexpected words you just dropped in there.
Yeah, three guesses what the musical might be about.
Talking about filmmakers, do you guys find they're generally open to working with you as a duo? Like, what's your process in terms of communication? What have your experiences been in that area?
Trying to think back. Normally positive.
Yeah, I think generally the filmmakers we've worked with have been very open. Like, especially so one of our recent features that we did, originally I had done a feature solo with them, and when they came back, I was like, I would love to bring my co-composer on board. And so we did the demo together, and they were like, oh my God, this is amazing. And now we're working on their next feature together. And it's been really great to be able to bring each other in. If one of us meets a director, or if one of us is like working with somebody, to be able to be like, hey, my co-composer and I generally do a lot of work together, and like there's almost kind of an extra level of trust, I think, once we get each other on board, because it's like, oh, now I don't just have one composer, I've got two people working on this passionately that are going to like not only show up for me, but they're going to hold each other accountable to like get this stuff done. I think directors actually really like it. Maybe at first they might be nervous, but for the most part, the reception has been so good. And then Connor and I have worked on so many things together that our track record speaks for itself. But how about you? How's your process been with how does it work with when you get approached for a project? Is it just automatically my co-composer and I, or do you ever get approached individually?
I think that's an interesting question. For quite a long time, really until the last year, quite often had not from people that we worked with, but from people that we meet in the industry, that they found it confusing that we were a duo, which I could never quite get to grips with what was confusing about it. I think it was this, we don't really know how you work. Like, who am I dealing with? Who is this? And yet, exactly as you said, with the people that we actually work with, it's really fluid. And you're right, you get, there's two people available to come back to you if you need a piece of information, or resend some stems or any of these things. In a conversation, when you're initially talking about narrative and your spotting session, you've got an additional perspective. You've got an extra person who can listen to the conversation between, director and composer. There's another person being able to sort of almost externally observe that and ask a follow-up question that maybe neither of those people would have thought of, because when you're talking, you're not always listening or thinking. So I think being able to have that sort of flow of conversation between multiple people is such a benefit. And I think it's becoming more and more, you're seeing more and more duos. Whether or not that's also because of as artists come through or people work as bands, I don't know. But it's such a benefit, I think, to the process. I saw that Austin had her. Did you want to jump in and ask a question?
Well, you guys are doing such a good job of answering the questions as I form them in my head. But my question was like, what are some of the preconceived notions and how do you navigate those misconceptions? I mean, and it sounds like you have to navigate that. But are there any kind of dumb misconceptions like, oh, are you going to get this done, twice as fast because there's two of you, or even like budgeting misconceptions and things like that?
That's such a good question.
Yeah.
I think the budgeting thing, often people are worried they're gonna
Have to pay twice as much.
Yeah, because in most of
Mhm.
the times, you're getting two people doing a role.
Whereas you just kind of have to like go in there fairly quickly with the budget is what the budget is.
It's the package, so it's our decision to work together, not theirs. The one that still I find a little bit frustrating is the number of times that it's assumed that I'm a singer. That's annoying. And Tom's the tech person, but I think
assumed I'm the tech person, isn't it?
yeah. So Tom's the tech.
Oh, is that a gendered thing, you think? I wanted to ask this actually.
100%. But then
Okay.
I'm so used to it because I would turn up to gigs in my 20s as a sax player with like a huge tenor case, and people would be like, "Oh, are you the singer?" I'm like,
Oh God.
like what?
Yeah.
It's just it doesn't seem to shift really. That happens less and less, whether it's just because we know more people, so they've skipped past that already, or we're just obnoxiously no, we write everything together, maybe as a badge of honor. But yeah, I think that's a weird one. Have you guys bumped up against any weird preconceptions?
Just the tech thing. People generally assume women can't do tech, but we're both great at tech, I would say. I mean, Alexa knows tech stuff I don't know, and I mean, I've noticed that in across all of the film composing industry is that women are assumed to not know tech or be able to mix, and we mix all of our own stuff, everything. We master everything too. So it's an interesting notion because I think people don't give you the chance to prove yourself so much with that. They just assume you're hiring like a mixer and often a man. But we actually do all that stuff ourselves. And that was a great question, Austin. And I know you're also a co-creator. So I appreciated that question from you specifically. That's cool.
Austin,
Alexa, you might have had something to say about that too. Sorry.
Oh, I think one of the only other things that I think Connor and I have run into is sometimes there is an assumption that we write we only write in like an an emotional style.
Oh yeah.
And I think like a good half of our credits are like horror and psychological thriller, but there have been times where people are like, there's an assumption that we write like exclusively Hallmarky style things, and I think it's because we're women, and we're still trying to escape that. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, we kind of love writing like intense horror music. And yeah, there's that is one that we've encountered, I think, a few times that's kind of tired.
We had anything like that. People assume who's more like
probably inevitably. Off the top of my head, I can't think, but yeah, I'm sure it happens. I'm sure it happens.
when we've met before we've worked with filmmakers, when we've had that first preliminary discussion with them just in person or a networking event, there has been occasions where we'll have both introduced ourselves to the filmmaker. They haven't quite listened, and then they've just directed their conversation at me and just thought that Daisy was the girlfriend on the side. And it takes a little bit of a polite explanation,
or less than polite.
They don't really, they don't deserve it.
Yeah, I think I mean maybe I'm just not paying attention. I'm not noticing that so much now. But then I guess we don't go to those rooms so much.
Yeah.
You learn the rooms where they're frustrating and you avoid them, and you find new rooms or you build new rooms.
Yeah.
Where those things are less than irritating. But yeah,
we're still kind of feeling our way around the industry, but I think we're learning more as to what kind of places to avoid going into.
Yeah, I think it's such a, I mean, we preach it all the time. Anytime we meet anyone, any composer who says, sorry, can I just, I've always wanted to ask you guys, like, how do you do it?
Yeah.
And I think the thing that seems to come to is, for other people, is trust. And there's a fear in letting go of your creative process or letting go of your creative idea. And I think for us,
You're talking about the filmmaker.
no, I'm
Sorry.
talking about co-composers. I'm
Right.
talking about from other composers who work on their own and think that they can't get past. They often say that it's because they're a perfectionist or because they are a control freak. That's often the sort of the laugh, oh, I'm a control freak. But I think it really does come from a place of fear, which I completely get.
Yeah.
But I just, like Tom said earlier, and I think like you guys were saying, at the end of the day, you're passing your work over to a filmmaker or a producer, whoever it, production team, whatever it is. They're going to ask for changes anyway. It's not your story. You're part of the process. You're part of the team. And for us, I think all we're doing is filtering early.
When you're writing your portfolio piece, you're allowed to have that perfectionism there. But I think when you're working for somebody else and you're writing music to help support a greater narrative, then you have to expect that what you're gonna have come back to you is someone wanting to take bits and pieces out of your music. So it kind of helps to have someone there to help refine that before it gets to the director in the first place. And it also helps you kind of refine your own expectations. I'm going to have someone who's going to critique me. Before it even goes to a decision maker, I'm going to have someone critique me. And that's fine, because it's not about me or them. It's about the music.
That's a good point. Yeah. I think co-composing, like, one of the best things about it for me is, like, you can't really have an ego and be a co-composer. I mean, you have an ego in the way that I want to make something good, but it's not, I want to see my name up there. It's like, I want to see our names up there. And learning that sort of, it feels better for me to have someone to share something with, because, like, I mean, this is just my lifestyle. I live alone and it's really hard, like, financially and everything. But to have a workplace where, like, I can lean on someone, to me, is like the most meaningful thing. I'm not all the way alone. It's like, I have Alexa, and that's, like, I could have never imagined that for my life, and I'm so grateful. And I think anyone who's, like, curious about co-composing should definitely try it. It might not be for them, you know? I've talked to a lot of composers who are like, I like my music the way it is, and that is totally cool. There's so many great solo composers, but I think if people are willing to breach the learning curve of how to share, it's like when we're toddlers, like sharing your goldfish with someone else. I think that's, once you get that little concept, co-composing becomes so easy, because it's all about sharing. It's not about, like, well, I added this line and it's really good. It's like, who frickin' cares? Who cares who added what? It's like, it doesn't matter. It's all going into the soup pot anyway. It's not like you put your name on it or something. It's like, I think that's been a really great thing for my ego in general, because I'm an artist. I'm a number 4 on the Enneagram. I'm the artist. I'm the individualist. But co-composing has, like, tempered me in that way, and I think it's awesome. It just makes me a better person. So thank you, Alexa.
A healthy thing, isn't it? And do you put your goldfish in a soup pot? Is that what?
That's a horrible analogy. Terrible analogy on my part.
But yeah, like, it's like, let's be really, really real for a second. This industry is harsh. It is really harsh. It's hard. It's so easy to get in your own head and get stuck, like, in a bad mental place or a bad emotional place, especially when our work is connected to our creativity and our creation. Having somebody to go through it at your side makes it so much better. Like, knowing that you've got somebody there as a friend, as a co-composer, as a fellow artist who is going to understand every beat of the journey with you and go through it. You get to go through it together. That's a gift because a lot of the times this industry, it's not just writing music. It's a lot of like going out and talking to people. If you're an introvert, it's terrifying. Like having somebody by your side makes it so much better. And it feels so much healthier for me personally to not have to do it alone.
I agree entirely. I don't think there's I don't think I have a single doubt in me that if I were to try and navigate this industry alone, I just would not have got as far as where I am now by being in a partnership with Daisy. There's not a single doubt in me at all. I would probably have, you know, hung up the Spurs quite a long time ago. And I think also that is not just because you know, I'm riding her waves, which I am, but I think it's also more to do with the fact that when you're in a duo, you kind of feed off of energy as best as you possibly can do. That just means that you probably already have that psychology, but when you walk into the room, that you're not the smartest person in that room. When you walk into a room, you're looking to actually learn from the other people. There's no benefit to you whatsoever walking into a room thinking that you know it all. And I think that is transferable to both being in a duo as well as it is being in a solo composer. If you ever have that, it's always best to kind of like lead with some type of humble attitude to be able to kind of absorb and grow in that manner.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think above anything else, like you said, Connor, it keeps you humble, because the second that you dig your heels in on something, you've got to be able to explain it to your partner. And if you can't explain it to your partner, there is no way on earth you could explain it to a director who doesn't care about you nearly as much. So, and isn't really willing to give you the same leeway.
I mean, I still struggle with that one because I don't feel like I'm as articulate as I could be. And music is an abstract that is a very hard thing to kind of get across. But I do know what you mean. It's always kind of like when someone asks you why and you can't back up the why, it's fairly important to understand. It's like you can't just throw anything at a canvas and think, well, that'll do. Well, why have you done that? I don't know.
No, I think that's a really good point, and that beautifully segues into my last point, which is that you know, I think for us, the biggest challenge has never been the music; it's been the communication. And the benefit of working this way is that we've had to be so aware of the importance of every single word that we say, and the ideas that we share, because you know, we're working in a medium that is visual, so it is very hard to describe, but similarly, when you're working in a partnership, you're dealing with something that is really hard to say it's right or wrong. It just makes you feel this or it makes you feel that. That's not a, you know, a binary. It's not, nothing's an either or. It's just trying to learn and trying to establish boundaries, trying to establish a language, trying to establish a way of working together that is respectful and gives space for creativity, but also gets the job done and is able to put across a strong idea and put across the best idea. Like you said, whoever has contributed to that in whatever way that is, it doesn't matter. What matters is it is the best for the project. And I think finding the language to collaborate around that is the most important thing. And I think often when I hear from other people who've tried co-composing and it hasn't worked out for them, it's rarely because the person wasn't a good enough writer. It's usually to do with the communication. The communication just didn't work for whatever reason. Either you're on different flows, you know, someone never responds and someone is really annoying about constantly texting, or
is that tentatively as well, where they're not really like, sorry, but it's done tentatively where they're not really kind of wanting to co-compose. It's just like they've been thrust together and they're like, okay, we've got to work together. Well, I'll do these cues and then you can do those little ones.
But yeah, but all of that is about trying to find a page for you to both be on. And I wonder if you guys, it's been the same, like building building a team that you two are and being friends as well, you know, you have to build a language around that gives space for all of these things that we have to deal with within the industry.
Yeah, I think we've grown both as communicators vastly since we started. I mean, and it's, it's been hard because we're both, different personalities. I'm much more like obvious with my emotions. Alexa's a little more private with her emotions, and we've had to find a way to kind of, get to the root of things. And I'd say communication is number one most important thing. Maybe organization too, and creativity I would say is like 3 actually, because you can't make something if you're not on the same page together. Then you're working on 2 different pages, and that's not useful. What would you say, Alexa?
Yeah, I think, communication and trust in the other person. Trusting that like you are in this together. Trusting that you're working to make each other better, to like you're constantly learning from each other. Being able to, again, like Connor and I, when we work on cues together, we have a spreadsheet on Google and we have a column for notes to each other back and forth. And just we are constantly putting our thoughts in there about what we're working on, about the other person's contributions, or like when Connor takes over a cue that I started or vice versa, being able to be like, oh, this is what I changed here, and knowing that it's never like a personal thing. Like you're not changing things just to change them or like take over. It's always just like in the interest of the cue, and trusting that the other person has that interest in mind. Like being able to find somebody that you can work with on that level, I think is more important, like Connor said, than like the creativity aspect, because the creativity will come. We are all artists, but being able to be eye to eye with somebody and being able to learn that communication process and that trust process, those are the 2 most vital things, I think, when it comes to co-composing.
Yeah, and I think if people have tried it and it hasn't worked for them, maybe it just wasn't the right person. It doesn't mean it's not the right choice for you on a project or whatever it is, but I think it's a gift that we met each other and that it works. It takes a lot of work, but it is also a gift. And some people are never able to communicate in the way that you need to. Even if we're talking not with words, but just musically communicate. But that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be an option in the future for you with somebody else.
Totally. You just got to find that right person. I think you learn so much about yourself co-composing with someone else because you notice like all the ways they're great and they notice the ways you're great, which like I don't see in myself. When Alexa gives me a compliment, like I feel amazing. I'm like, oh my God, yes, because I've like impressed her or something, and I look up to her so much. And I think if you can find a partner who you look up to and they look up to you, like literally, what could be better than that? I can't even imagine it. It's been amazing to be on a journey with someone else, like the hero's journey together, the heroine's journey, instead of like Luke Skywalker all by himself. Like I feel for him. That's hard. But between us, we have 4 lightsabers now. Like, that's way better. Sorry, I forgot to ask this. Oh, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say, like, Connor telling me she likes something that I did or added to a cue feels better than any director telling me.
Same. I'm like, oh, we're done. We're good.
Especially like, I mean, we're all creatives. We all feed off of validation, and especially when we've just shared something that we've just recently created as well, having that very fresh validation from your co-composer, it's an amazing feeling that when the director says, "Well done, yeah, that's working," it's like, oh, what do you know?
Yeah, exactly. You can be like, don't listen to them. You did a great job. And I think that's awesome. Audience, if you have any questions, please hit us up because we're reaching the end of our hour. But if anyone has questions, we would be so happy to answer them. And also no pressure if you don't. It's all good. Thank y'all, Becca, Carolyn. Thank y'all so much for being here. Thank you all for being here. Feel free to reach out with questions too, email or anything, or any questions at all.
I'm afraid that we've gone in on a hard sell with like co-composing, and everyone here is just going, "What are you saying that we should go fast dating for co-composers?" Like, no, it is it's an organic thing, you know, and it's not like we're ever saying like what we're doing is better. It's not. It's just what works for us.
Totally. Oh,
Janet.
Janet.
Hi,
Hello.
Janet.
Hi Daisy, you're right. That was great, thank you guys. I have a question. Having forged such a positive partnership, both partnerships here, do you still ever collaborate with other people on any projects? And if you find yourself in I mean, this might just be nope, and that's the answer. But if you do you find yourself bringing the same instincts, and do they work with somebody else, or is this a very personal identity between two people who've developed a communication language over time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we'd definitely be open to collaborating with other people, especially if they have drum kits in their background as well. That's always really
And a nice studio is what you're saying.
but actually, but it's not like, I don't know if this is the same for you guys, but it's not like Daisy and I have a set template for every project where we go in and we start doing exactly the same thing. So we try to always make sure that we can like evolve and learn from what we're doing with each other, and by working with somebody else, I think that's going to make sure that you bring the same amount of expectations, that you're going to have to feel each other out, figuratively speaking. You're going to have to just kind of like work on like what are the strengths and how you can best work with each other. I mean, for us, yeah, we'd be open.
What about you guys?
It's a great question. I have done some co-composing with other composers, but it's totally different with every person. You know, you bring the skills you have, but the relationship is subjective based on, you know, your relationship. So whenever I come back after working with someone else, with Alexa, it's like just coming back to your comfort place. And it's like, oh, great, I can get back into this thing I know really well. Whereas when I've co-composed with someone else, it's more of a new learning experience where you're learning them. And that's great too, but it's just so different. Like every person is so different. And maybe that's why co-composing is such a code, is because it's probably, I'm imagining it's different. I haven't done a ton of it, but I recently wrote a Christmas song with a friend, and I will say the process was totally different.
Refreshingly so, or did it make you feel like glad that you've got to go back to Alexa?
That is
No
that's
pressure.
hilarious.
No pressure.
I think it's always refreshing to work with someone you haven't worked with before. But anytime I work solo, I see a question in there about struggling to write alone after co-composing. It's always great to come back to Alexa, because writing alone or even writing with someone different is different. It's different. And writing alone for me is not so fun, because I get pretty lonely. So it's just not my favorite thing to do. What about you, Alexa?
Oh, absolutely the same. So like we've both done a couple of solo projects, and every time I always have the instinct to go into my sheet and write notes to Connor, and then I'm like, oh wait. And it's just anytime I write solo, like it is different. It's like a different process, it's a different mindset. It's always great to come back to co-composing. Like it just feels like home base at this point, and it's just the loneliness really strikes true. Like it is for me personally, it's a lonelier process, that I prefer co-composing, because just again, having somebody to talk about this project with, having like that dialogue, somebody who understands entirely everything that you've been through on a piece, makes it so much, it feels different. It feels more alive to me.
Yes.
I think for me, I'm great for like the first 8 bars on my own, and then I just come to an end. I'm like, oh, and then I'm sick of myself already. So literally what it is. I get sick of myself. I'm like, oh, this is so boring. And then when I can't, I'm unpracticed at pushing through that kind of block, I think, because I'm used to kind of going, Tom, can you just like come and like take it off? Because I, like one of you guys said earlier, I know he will sit down, and whereas I might be running that way, he'll come in and he'll just go like, "Bleh." And I'll be like, oh, I was never going to go that way, but that's interesting. And then I'm like, oh, hang on, I can add on to that. That's now inspired me. And for me, that lack of external inspiration, I really struggle. I mean, it's the same reason I work in film. Like, I was never going to be a concert composer or whatever, because I just, my brain works through collaboration and through external inspiration. And I get sick of myself. So those three things mean my setup, life setup, fits really well. I would love to be able to, I mean, I think at some point it will happen, because there'll be something that I finally have to say that needs to be the way that I need to say it. And I think that's really important, but I'm kind of not in a rush to do that, because I really like being surprised by how Tom gives musical input, and, you know, takes me off on a magical roundabout somewhere else.
Maybe that's our key word for today that keeps popping up into my head, is being surprised. It really is like so surprising working with a co-composer in every way. And I think that keeps things fresh. And I don't know, it just keeps you engaged. So I think it's a positive thing if you can find someone you trust and you want to work with. I can't really think of any negatives myself. And I had that on the question sheet too. But it sounds like both teams are like, go co-composing.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have done a lot more solo projects than us. I don't think I've really got a basis for comparison. I've never really done a solo project by myself, and it's not like it's a bucket list item for me either. But you know, I'm fine as it. You know, I'm fine as it is.
Everything's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a question from Linda about how do you deal with, I think this is for you guys, when you're working in separate studios, how do you navigate technical challenges?
Yeah.
This is a good question, Connor. we probably well known have a a problem with Discord.
Oh yeah.
So Connor and I are always simultaneously in at least 3 different conversations with each other across different platforms, like on Instagram, on text, and on Discord. We are like just constantly having these conversations, and like but in terms of Zoom and FaceTime delay, we are lucky that when we want to be in the room together, we're in LA, so depending on traffic, 12 minutes or 45 minutes from each other.
Yeah.
But we can actually just go and be in the room together, which is fantastic. But we do have at least once a week we're on FaceTime together, or together working on a musical. But it's I think our process has been, if we have a problem on one platform, we'll just hop over to another.
Yeah, we try them all. We try them all. And some are better than others. Zoom is better for video, but Discord is best for type. And audio could be any of them. They're all pretty okay. So we don't let really anything like that stand in our way. If we mess up on something, it's usually a lack of communication or just a general flub up, which could happen to anyone. But I think in a co-composing situation, it's so much easier to admit to wrongdoing than if you're solo with a director. We can be like, oops, we messed up. And for some reason that feels safer than I messed up to a director.
Yeah.
And we mess up all the time. Who does it?
Yeah. Earlier this week, actually, we had deliveries for a project that we're working on, and I had done the deliveries and the stems, or the deliveries, sorry. And my Dropbox did not sync. I was having a problem with Dropbox on my computer. And for whatever reason, it showed on my end that it was uploaded, but on the director's end, they were like, oh, we're not seeing the files in these folders. And it feels so much safer. Oh my God, I apologize. My Dropbox had an issue. I'll get right on that. And like having another person there just in case, like I think Connor was out of town, but there's another person there who can jump on and be like, I got this. And that happens all the time. If one of us is traveling, or if something comes up for one of us, the other person is there to be like, it's okay, I got this. Having that is such a relief.
Mhm.
Like knowing there's always somebody who's got your back, wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah, why would you not want that? Have we converted you all yet? No, I'm just kidding. Thank you all so much for joining. This has been honestly such a Valentine's treat, and this was really fun. We've been so curious to talk to y'all about this, and it's been better than expected. It's been amazing. Not that I had expectations, but it's been fabulous.
Daisy and I really enjoyed talking to you both as well, and getting to geek out about something that feels, it's fairly unexplored in terms of what composers can do in the composer community. So I'm glad that we had the chance to do this. It's been great.
And thanks you guys for joining us and being on screen as well. It really makes a difference when I can see your lovely familiar faces.
It's so fun.
Love it. I love it.
Well,
Cool.
thank you all. See everyone at other things around. Some of your names are unfamiliar, and I hope to get to know you better. And thank you all. Have a great Valentine's Day. Bye, everybody.